The fastest way to improve your anatomy is to probably go through an entire book and copy every drawing. But to be honest with you, I don't have the discipline to do that. And the good news is you don't have to if you want to draw like this, or just have fun with anatomy like this. And as much as I want to make a video about the perfect anatomy routine, I don't have one. But what I can do is show you my realistic anatomy study process by taking you through my sketchbook. And I've narrowed down my anatomy study process into 5 basic steps that you can copy and apply into your own studies to see fast anatomy improvement without needing to struggle through textbooks. I want to be clear before I begin, these 5 parts do not need to be completed in any order. They can be mixed and matched, and as long as you're touching on each of them once in a while, your anatomy will improve. But we'll begin with the most important one that covers about 80% of everything you're going to need to know about anatomy, and it is mannequinization. You see, the problem with anatomy and why it's so difficult is because the human body is so complex, and it's really difficult to memorize anything if you don't find a way to simplify the body. Mannequinization solves this problem by training you to interpret the complex human body as basic volumes. Once you can understand the body as basic volumes, everything else falls into place because the complex muscle structures and bones can just be slotted in layer by layer onto this simple base. That's why 80% of the time I'm practicing anatomy, I am working with my mannequins, page after page. All I'm focusing on is understanding the basic volumes of the mannequin. And I promise you, you cannot do this exercise enough if you want to draw anatomy from your imagination. Mannequinization is like the foundation to your house. You have to make sure it's solid if you're going to build up anything more complex on top of it. So to practice this, take a reference online, and instead of drawing the human body, translate it into a sequence of boxes and cylinders that match the orientation without the complexities of the figure. Now, you're going to want to keep 2 things in mind as you do this. First is that you want believable volumes. You want to make sure that your cylinders are oriented in the correct position. You want to make sure that your boxes all feel like they could really exist in the correct perspective. And the second thing you want to keep in mind is dynamic posing. It's really easy to create stiff mannequins that don't have a strong sense of depth like this. In fact, when you're beginning, you're probably going to create a lot more of this than of drawings like this. This is where you want to aim towards. Even though you're working with basic boxes, you still want the boxes to feel alive. So they need to have a sense of dynamism. This means you want to push your contrast. You do not want your boxes to be stacked parallel. Instead, try to have your boxes twisted at different angles so they mimic the human body. Humans don't stand stiff. They always stand with a sense of curvature. Now, to practice these, you need to get really familiar with your basic forms, because as you can see, the human body can be really broken down into these basic cylinders and boxes. So if you are unfamiliar with your boxes, you're going to have trouble down the line. The takeaway tip for this entire exercise is to always draw through your forms. Your priority at this stage is to draw forms correctly, because if you don't draw through them, you'll have no evidence that they're actually solid. Even though your drawings may look uglier when you draw through them, you're constructing better, and that's what's going to make the difference between good anatomy and a weak drawing. Now, if you want help with all of this, then our sponsor, ArtWad, is there to help you, because as you might have heard, ArtWad is the best place to learn how to draw with a form-first foundation. If you've been struggling to draw your basic forms, and especially if you've been struggling to convert your understanding of basic forms into artistic freedom that will help you draw anatomy, vehicles, architecture, backgrounds, clothing, animals, and so much more, then that's where ArtWad is here to help, because they're an online, self-paced learning platform that guides you through all of the lessons I just pointed out in a structured format that gives you homework, video lessons, and feedback so that you can improve much more and stress much less on your self-taught learning journey. In fact, teaching you anatomy just like this is what ArtWad specializes in. They begin with the mannequin and then teach you how to interpret the complex muscle structure with basic forms all the way from your head to your toes. And then they teach you how to add drapery onto your anatomy so that you're not just creating nude people, you're actually drawing full costumed characters. That's how I've been studying, and it's how you can as well. And there's no better time to do it than now, because they're offering a 30% discount for anybody who uses my link to sign up in the description. So if you're ready to make huge progress in your art with a structured and proven format, ArtWad's there to help you. Thanks ArtWad for sponsoring this video. Now let's talk about what happens after you've learned mannequinization, and that is layering. Layering looks just like this. It's the process of building onto your mannequin and actually making anatomy. This is where you can no longer glide by with basic proportional knowledge of the human body. You have to pick up a textbook and learn about different muscle groups and terminology like latissimus dorsi and stuff like that. It is complex, so what I do is I only study certain muscle groups at a time. For 1 week, just focus on the torso. On another week, just focus on the legs. Although it's complicated, you'll find that muscles really just have one function. They bring two bones together. So if you can understand where you're trying to take the bone, you'll understand how to insert the muscles. This stage will take a lot of time to get comfortable with, so I don't recommend practicing like this. Instead, once you've created your mannequin, use a different color pen to draw over your mannequin to add the fat and muscle groups that you've been studying. One huge mistake I keep making is tunnel visioning on the detail before finishing the complete structure of the mannequin. It is way better to create basic volumes with believable perspective than it is to create a detailed muscle group that is on a poorly proportioned mannequin. So avoid tunnel visioning like I am right now, and instead draw your entire scene out with basic volumes and add detail on top of them. This way you're seeing the whole scene with correct proportions before honing in on the details. Remember that this is not a step-by-step process. These are different exercises I apply all the time. So I'm doing mannequins here, but I'm also throwing in layering to always remind myself of what the goal is, which is understanding believable anatomy. This is an easier way to layer, where you're drawing directly on top of your mannequin. So the mannequin's in blue and the layering of the anatomy is in black. But this is a more difficult way to layer, which is drawing the pose and then redrawing it as a finished drawing over here. This, although it's more difficult, will help you draw from imagination better. Now, there may be one problem you've had so far that hasn't been addressed. Why do my mannequins look bad while someone else's might look good? Well, you're going to have that problem if you're learning this exercise, and I have that all the time, and that's where I use the third exercise to help me, and that is the master study. Here's the thing, you're not going to improve just by doing these exercises all the time. You need to correct them towards the styles that you like. That's why master studies are so important. Artists have already figured out how to make anatomy look good. Don't try to do it all by yourself. Just take what they figured out and use it. Studying from an anatomy textbook is a master study. I don't know how to simplify the skull, and I can't do it effectively, so I look at Morpho's version of it. By copying from this book, I not only learn what they're trying to do, but I build the muscle memory to do it just like them. And of course, it doesn't just have to be instructional books. This drawing from Bryce Collender was copied from a short of his, where I just loved the way he drew triceps and I wanted to copy that anatomy. Think of master studies as collecting solutions. Anytime I see an artist draw something I've struggled with, I take their solution and draw it myself. This way I sort of pocket their solution and one day it'll come back to me. I think when you call it master studies, it gives this idea that you have to treat it with a lot of intensity and draw for 3 hours. You don't. You can literally spend 2 minutes on a sketch just to draw this quick thing that you liked about another artist. These are little notes you keep that eventually build your style and your understanding of anatomy. So far, we've covered 3 different exercises, and they have all been methodical and structured approaches to drawing. But we're missing a big element of drawing anatomy, and that is gesture. Hi, Editing Tieran here. Hope you're liking the video so far. I cut a lot of what Tieran's talking about here because he's just rambling. Here's how you practice gesture. You identify the story of the pose and you exaggerate it. I like to do this when I'm out in public, and I like to find someone doing an action and then maybe tell the story on my paper. But you can practice this more traditionally by finding a pose, identifying the line of action, which is the energy going through it, and then exaggerate it. So if someone's swinging a tennis racket, you're going to swing the tennis racket even harder. If they're sad, you're going to make them sadder. You get the point. I'm not the best at it personally, so I'll defer to this video if you want to know more. Of course, we want to learn anatomy, but it's not because we want to become anatomy gods. It's because we want to be able to draw people doing things. Storytelling is the reason we draw in the first place. You want to maybe draw your day, or you want to make a comic book or create your OCs. So gesture isolates that exercise. It trains you to create poses with a story in mind. The two things to keep in mind while doing gesture is to have the story in mind and work quickly. So I prefer to draw gestures in person, where I might go to a cafe or hang out outside and draw people while they're working, because seeing that person in motion and actually in front of you forces you to work quickly, for one, but it also shows you the actual story in the moment. The main idea is take everything you know from your structured practice and put it into your subconscious. You do this by working at a faster pace than you're comfortable with. And by focusing on story, you learn to actually use your characters to create an emotional reaction in the viewer. So for example, here, someone was looking for something in their bag, and I tried to capture the shapes and even wrote that little story moment where they're like, where is it? And this brings us to the final aspect and my favorite, which is drawing from imagination. The whole point of what you're studying anatomy for is to play, so treat this fifth stage as play. Drawing from imagination happens throughout your anatomy study, as every other exercise so far should. And it looks like this, where you get to apply all the anatomy studies and textbook knowledge into something that is enjoyable and fun and doesn't have any rules. So I'm doing this all the time. Anytime I'm not studying, I'm really drawing from imagination. But this is where you cement the information you've learned, because if you're not actually drawing from imagination, you're not going to memorize as much in your studies because your brain has no reason to memorize it. So simply by drawing from imagination, you put your brain in that state of recall, which is necessary to remember anything. I find it's one of the best things you can do if you want to improve as a self-taught artist, because drawing from imagination always reminds you what you don't know. And that means when you don't know something, when you do study, you don't have questions of, what should I study? What should I get better at? It's always right on the forefront of your mind. I need to work on my noses. I need to work on my face from the freer angle, whatever. If you draw from imagination, the problems will become evident, and therefore the solutions will become easier to find. By the way, if drawing from imagination is what you want to do with your anatomy, then you can join my waitlist for the workshop I have coming up in September. Now, we just sold out the workshop coming up in May, and more than half the seats are already gone for September. But if you want to get the last few seats, then you should do so by joining the waitlist, because those are the people who are going to know first. And you're going to learn everything you have to not only draw anatomy from imagination, but to put these anatomical figures in a believable scene and to have fun with your drawing. This is a live cohort, so don't join if you're not serious about joining a class, talking to people, and it's going to be pretty intense. But let's close up and review the 5 steps: mannequinization, layering, master studies, gesture, and imagination drawing. If you do each of these 5, no matter the order you do it in, I guarantee your anatomy is going to get better. I hope this was helpful for you. Sorry there's not a perfect drawing routine, but if you do want that sort of thing, just check out this video, because I already made a optimized drawing routine for the people who are interested, and it has anatomy as well. Hope that was helpful, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.